Hey, Spartans, how are you all? I'm still missing you deeply. We did have a good weekend. I hope that you did. And the first few days of the week has been really good. I hope that you all are staying active, that you're looking at the other teachers' videos and Miss Craddock's morning messages um, because everybody's doing some incredible things, and you all are doing a great job doing your remote learning. But I sure do miss you and can't wait to see you soon. So, last time we talked about the fifth president of the United States. Do you remember who he was? James Mon- Monroe. So, we've talked about George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and now James Monroe. And the sixth president of the United States, I'll tell you at the end. All right. We have Alabama's capital is Montgomery. Alaska's uh, capital is Juneau. Arizona's capital is Phoenix. Arkansas's capital is Little Rock. California's capital is Sacramento. And now we are to one of my favorite states, Colorado. Think about what the capital of Colorado is, and I'll tell you at the end. I hope that you all are memorizing these. My family and I used to go to Glenwood Springs, Colorado in the summer times and spend a few weeks, and it's just a wonderful place to be. Most people go in the winter to ski, but we went in the summer to the spa there in Glenwood Springs. So if you ever get a chance, go to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. All right, I'm going to do nursery rhymes first. I found a couple that I think that you will enjoy. The first one is Jack Sprat. Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. So betwixt them two, they licked the platter clean. So that's one of my favorites. And then here's another one, Hushabye. Hushabye, baby, daddy is near, mama is a lady, and that's very clear. So that's a good one. And I'll read one more called Daffodils. Daffy Down Dilly has come to town in a yellow petticoat and a green gown. All right, so here's the picture for Jack Sprat. Could eat no fat. His wife could eat no lean. So betwixt them two, they licked the platter clean. And then here is the Hushabye picture. So I hope that you're enjoying those. And if it's a nice day, go outside and do some jump ropes with those because that's always fun. Hope you're riding your bike. My daughter and I have been riding our bikes a lot. We've been visiting a couple of our friends, Ronan Ficklin. We've visited him a few times, and Ashley. Ashley's now in middle school. We visited her and her sister, and I think whose class is she? I think they're both. One is in Miss Pratt's class, and the other is in, Alyssa is in Miss Pratt's class, I think, and Ronan is in Miss Milan's class. But I've moved, so I'm not in the neighborhood anymore, so I can't do my drive-bys anymore, so I sure am going to miss you as I ride my bike. Lily and Emily Stewart, I hope that you all are still memorizing your states and your capitals and your presidents in order. Our picture book for today is called The Web Files. It's by Margie Palatini, and it's illustrated by Richard Eaglesky. This is an AR book, so you can take an AR test on this book. It was published in 2001, and the dedication says, "In memory of my dad, the chief." And that's who the author dedicated it to. This is a story that's kind of funny. There's a story that I used to watch on television, and one of the main characters was Joe Friday, and he would say things like this. So I think this character was based on him and some of the things he said. 6:32 a.m. This is the farm. My partner Bill and I were working the barnyard shift. It was peaceful, quiet. Then we got the call. Cock-a-doodle-doo! A lot of squawking going on down in coop area. Detective Webb looks like foul play. Report says feathers are flying. Chief says we should check out the chicks. Chicks? Check. Let's fly. Dum da dum dum. "6:35 a.m. The hen's house. We knocked on the door. She answered. Quack, 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 quack. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. I've been robbed, she clucked, unruffling her feathers. Robbed, I tell you, robbed, robbed, robbed. So you were saying that you were robbed. Is that right, ma'am? What exactly is missing from the nest, ma'am? Eggs, ma'am? Chicks, ma'am? Peppers, she said with a flap. Peppers, I said. My perfect purple peppers that were just about ready to be pickled. About how many perfect purple, almost picked peppers would you say were pilfered, pinched, and picked? A bushel? No, a peck, I tell you. A whole purple pepper picking peck. Have any idea who would pick a peck of your perfect purple, almost pickled peppers? Not a clue, she clucked. I turned to Bill and gave a quick quack. Round up the usual suspects. Dum da dum dum dum. "9:06 a.m. Headquarters was hopping. A miss named Muffet had just been tossed off her tuffet, and a gal named Pete was missing some sheep. I noticed that 3 little kittens had lost their mittens. They began to cry. I wanted to help. I couldn't. I had pickled peppers to worry about. We had Horner in the corner, and were trying to make little Bo Blue quack. Okay, little blue boy, quit blowing your horn. Time to make hay. Suppose you just tell me where you were this morning. I'm innocent, I tell you, I'm innocent, quivered the boy. I was under the haystack, fast asleep, honest. Ask anybody. Sure. I've heard that bedtime story before. Got any witnesses? My partner shook his head. No, the sheep were in the meadow, cows were in the corn. Things looked black for the boy in blue, and then we got another call. There's been some horsing around reported down near barn and pen, said Bill. Looks like another robbery. We put the kid out to pasture. Dum da dum dum. Two robberies. 10:43 a.m. Corner of barn and pen. Bill and I talked to the horses. Whoa, you there, I called out. Like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind, sir. Nay, not at all, he answered. What do you know about a peck of unlawfully picked perfect purple almost pickled peppers? Peppers? A peck of purple peppers? Not a thing. But somebody just hightailed it out of here with a tub of my tartest tasty tomatoes. Tomatoes? You say tomatoes. I say tomatoes. Somebody just hauled the whole thing off. And find my lettuce while you're at it too, sighed the sheep. Somebody just lifted a load of luscious leafy lettuce not 10 minutes ago. This is bad, really bad. My partner looked at me and scratched his head. Peppers, tomatoes, lettuce. What do you make out of all of this, Webb? There was only one thing to make out of all of this. Salad. Dum da dum dum. "11:47 a.m. The squad room. My partner and I were still trying to quack the case, but we didn't have any idea of whom to ID. Rats, said Bill. That's it, I shouted. There was only one suspect who was sneaky enough, wily enough, and tricky enough to pick a peck of purple perfect purple, almost pickled peppers. Take a tub of tasty tart tomatoes and lift a load of luscious leafy lettuce. 12:22 p.m. My partner and I were hot on the tail of that dirty rat. Dum da dum dum. 12:46 a.m. A real hole in the wall. We know you're holed up in there, you dirty rat. Let us in. He did. Hey, what's up, Duck? There's been some trouble down on the farm, I said. What do you know about a rash of recent robberies? 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 What makes you think I know anything about robbery? I'm no cheesy snitch. Can it, Ratso? I said. You've been in nothing but garbage for years. The rat grinned. Okay, sure. Go ahead, Flatfoot. Look anywhere you want. He was still smirking a smile. But make it quick, Quacker. You're interrupting my lunch. What do you think his lunch is? Lunch, eh, rodent? I said, taking another gander at his table. Hey, what's going on here? The rat hissed. You're not going to pin this rap on me. Where's your evidence? You waddling webfoot. You got nothing on me, nothing. See, I'm clean, I tell you, clean. I picked a piece of lettuce from under his chin. Not clean enough, you dirty rat. I smelled his breath, just as I suspected. Garlic mayo. Book him, Ducko. His salad days are over. Oh, over. But they can't be over, he cried as he was cuffed and led away. I haven't even had my dessert. My partner gave me a pat on the back. Looks like you quacked another one, Webb. But how did you ever figure it was him? Just played a hunch he ate the evidence for lunch and forgot to use his napkin and brush his teeth. He's a dirty rat. He never did have good hygiene. Dum da dum dum. The dirty rat was tried and convicted on 3 counts of vegetable vagrancy, offensive bad breath, and not using a napkin to wipe under his chin. He was sent up the river and was sentenced to 6 months of farm labor with time off for good behavior, better table manners, and clean teeth. Case closed. Dum da dum dum. Dum da dum dum dum. All right. I hope you enjoyed that picture book, the web files. Parents, if you're listening or watching, I know that you got a kick out of this. It's kind of reminiscence of some things that we grew up listening to and watching, especially Dragnet in the old days with Joe Friday and Jack Webb, as played by Jack Webb. So that was the web files. That's a good one. And now on to my favorite, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. All right, and I think we are in, let me see, chapter 9. Chapter 9, that's right. Edmund had disappeared from the beaver's dam after they had eaten dinner. He had heard the secret that Aslan was on the move in Narnia. And the beavers were like, look, we've got to get out of here, and we've got to get out of here fast, or we're going to be picked up by the witch and her secret police. Also, they've got to get on the move because they want to meet Aslan at the stone table. Remember, if you don't have enough books at home, you want to read some books, you can check books out. If you have a library card, you can check them out on your device, either your phone or on your tablet. You can also call Novel. It's a local bookstore at Poplar and Perkins area in Laurelwood, and they will deliver books to you, and they will also bring the books to your car, so they have curbside pickup as well. So you can check out some books, buy some books there if you want to purchase some books, or just check them out online and look at the back of this. I'd rather be reading. I love to read reading and crossword puzzles. All right, chapter 9, In the Witch's House. And now, of course, you want to know what had happened to Edmund. He had eaten his share of the dinner, but he hadn't really enjoyed it because he was thinking all the time about Turkish delight, and there's nothing that spoils the taste of a good ordinary food half as much as the memory of bad magic food. And he had heard the conversation and hadn't enjoyed it much either, because he kept on thinking that the others were taking no notice of him and trying to give him the cold shoulder. They weren't, but he imagined it. And then he had listened until Mr. Beaver had told them about Aslan, and until he had heard the whole arrangement for meeting Aslan at the stone table. It was then that he began, very quietly, to edge himself under the curtain which hung over the door, for the mention of Aslan gave him a mysterious and horrible feeling, just as it had given the others a mysterious and lovely feeling. Just as Mr. Beaver had been repeating the rhymes about Adam's flesh and Adam's bone, Edmund had been very quietly turning the door handle, and just before Mr. Beaver had begun telling them that the White Witch wasn't really human at all, but half Jinn and half giantess, Edmund had got outside into the snow and cautiously closed the door behind him. You mustn't think that even now Edmund was quite so bad that he actually wanted his brothers and sisters to be turned into stone. He did want Turkish delight, and to be a prince, and later a king, and to pay Peter out for calling him a beast. As for what the witch would do with the others, he didn't want her to be particularly nice to them, certainly not to put them on the same level as himself, but he managed to believe, or to pretend he believed, that she wouldn't do anything very bad to them, because, he said to himself, all these people who say nasty things about her are her enemies, and probably half of it isn't true. She was jolly nice to me, anyway, much nicer than they say. I expect she is the rightful queen, really. Anyway, she'll be better than that awful Aslan. At least that was the excuse he made in his own mind for what he was doing. It wasn't a very good excuse, however, for deep down inside, he really knew that the White Witch was bad and cruel. The first thing he realized when he got outside and found the snow falling all around him was that he had left his coat behind in the beaver's house, and of course there was no chance of going back to get it now. The next thing he realized was that the daylight was almost gone, for it had been nearly 3 o'clock when they sat down to dinner, and the winter days were short. He hadn't reckoned on this, but he had to make the best of it, so he turned up his collar and shuffled across the top of the dam. Luckily, it wasn't so slippery since the snow had fallen, to the far side of the river. It was pretty bad when he reached the far side. It was growing darker every minute, and what with that and the snowflakes swirling all around him, he could hardly see 3 feet ahead. And then, too, there was no road. He kept slipping into deep drifts of snow and skidding on frozen puddles and tripping over fallen tree trunks and sliding down steep banks and barking his shins against the rocks till he was wet and cold and bruised all over. The silence and the loneliness were dreadful. In fact, I really think he might have given up the whole plan and gone back and owned up and made friends with the others if he hadn't happened to say to himself, when I'm king of Narnia, the first thing I shall do is to make some decent roads. And of course, that set him off thinking about being king and all the other things he would do, and this cheered him up a good deal. He had just settled into his mind what sort of palace he would have and how many cars, and all about his private cinema and where the principal railways would run and what laws he would make against beavers and dams, and was putting the finishing touches to some schemes for keeping Peter in his place when the weather changed. First, the snow stopped. Then the wind sprang up and it became freezing cold. Finally, the clouds rolled away and the moon came out. It was a full moon, and shining on all that snow, it made everything almost as bright as day. Only the shadows were rather confusing. He would never have found his way if the moon hadn't come out by the time he got to the other river you remember he had seen when they first arrived at the Beavers, a smaller river flowing into the great one lower down. He now reached this and turned to follow it. And here's a picture of Edmund. I don't know if you can see it. He's walking along. But the little valley down which it came was much steeper and rockier than the one he had just left, and much overgrown with bushes, so that he could not have managed it at all in the dark. Even as it was, he got wet through, for he had to stoop under branches, and great loads of snow came sliding off onto his back. And every time this happened, he thought more and more how he hated Peter, just as if all this had been Peter's fault. But at last he came to a part where it was more level and the valley opened out, and there on the other side of the river, quite close to him, in the middle of the little plain between two hills, he saw what must be the White Witch's house, and the moon was shining brighter than ever. The house was really a small castle. It seemed to be all towers, little towers with long pointed spires on them, sharp as needles. They looked like huge dunces' caps or sorcerers' caps, and they shone in the moonlight, and their long shadows looked strange on the snow. Edmund began to be afraid of the house, but it was too late to think of turning back now. He crossed the river on the ice and walked up to the house. There was nothing stirring, not the slightest sound anywhere. Even his own feet made no noise on the deep, newly fallen snow. He walked on, past corner after corner of the house, and past turret after turret to find the door. He had to go right round to the far side before he found it. It was a huge arch, but the great iron gate stood wide open. And here he is standing before the Edmund crept up to the arch and looked inside into the courtyard, and there he saw a sight that nearly made his heart stop beating. Just inside the gate, with the moonlight shining on it, stood an enormous lion, crouched as if ready to spring, and Edmund stood in the shadow of the arch, afraid to go on and afraid to go back, and his knees knocking together. He stood there so long that his teeth would have been chattering with cold if they had not been chattering with fear. How long this really lasted, I don't know, but it seemed to Edmund to last for hours. Then, at last, he began to wonder why the lion was standing so still, for it hadn't moved 1 inch since he first set eyes on it. Edmund now ventured a little nearer, still keeping in the shadow of the arch as much as he could. He now saw from the way the lion was standing that it couldn't have been looking at him at all. But supposing it turns its head, thought Edmund. In fact, it was staring at something else, namely a little dwarf who stood with his back to it about 4 feet away. Aha, thought Edmund, when it springs at the dwarf, then will be my chance to escape. But still the lion never moved, nor did the dwarf. And now at last Edmund remembered what the others had said about the White Witch turning people into stone. Perhaps this was only a stone lion. And as soon as he had thought of that, he noticed that the lion's back and the top of the head were covered with snow. Of course, it must be only a statue. No living animal would have let itself get covered with snow. Then very slowly, and with his heart beating as if it would burst, Edmund ventured up to the lion. Even now he hardly dared to touch it, but at last he could put out his hand very quickly, and did. It was cold stone. He had been afraid of a mere statue. The relief which Edmund felt was so great that in spite of the cold he suddenly got warm all over right down to his toes. At the same time there came into his head what seemed a perfectly lovely idea. Probably, he thought, this is the great lion, Aslan, that they were talking about. She's caught him already and turned him into stone. What do you think? Do you think that's Aslan? And what's going to happen next? So, that's the end of their fine ideas about him. Pooh, who's afraid of Aslan? And he stood there gloating over the stone lion, and presently he did something very silly and childish. He took a stump of lead pencil out of his pocket and scribbled a mustache on the lion's upper lip and a pair of spectacles on the eyes. Then he said, "Yah, silly old Aslan, how do you like being stone? You thought yourself mighty fine, didn't you?" But in spite of the scribbles on it, the face of the great stone beast still looked so terrible and sad and noble, staring up in the moonlight, that Edmund didn't really get any fun out of jeering at it. He turned away and began to cross the courtyard. As he got into the middle of it, he saw that there were dozens of statues all about, standing here and there, rather as the pieces stand on a chessboard when it is halfway through the game. There were stone satyrs, and stone wolves, and bears, and foxes, and catamountains of stone. There were lovely stone shapes that looked like women, but who were really the spirits of trees. There was a great shape of a centaur, and a winged horse, and a long, lithe creature that Edmund took to be a dragon. They all looked so strange, standing there perfectly lifelike, and also perfectly still in the bright, cold moonlight, that it was eerie work crossing the courtyard. Right in the very middle stood a huge shape like a man, but as tall as a tree, with a fierce face and a shaggy beard and a great club in its right hand, even though he knew that it was only a stone giant and not a live one. Edmund did not like going past it. He now saw that there was a dim light showing from the doorway on the far side of the courtyard. He went to it. There was a flight of stone steps going up to an open door. Edmund went up to them. Across the threshold lay a great wolf. It's all right, he kept saying to himself. It's only a stone wolf. It can't hurt me. And he raised one leg to step over it. Instantly the huge creature rose, with all the hair bristling along its back, opened a great red mouth, and said in a growling voice, "Who's there? Who's there? Stand still, stranger, and tell me who you are." If you please, sir," said Edmund, trembling so that he could hardly speak. "My name is Edmund, and I'm the son of Adam, and that Her Majesty met in the wood the other day, and I've come to bring her the news that my brothers and sisters are now here in Narnia, quite close in the beaver's house. She wanted to see them." "I will tell Her Majesty," said the wolf. "Meanwhile, stand still on the threshold, as you value your life." Then it vanished into the house. Edmund stood and waited, his fingers aching with cold and his heart pounding in his chest, and presently the great wolf, Mogram, the chief of the witches' secret police, came bounding back and said, come in, fortunate favorite of the queen, or else not so favorite." And Edmund went in, taking great care not to tread on the wolf's paws. He found himself in a long, gloomy hall with many pillars full, as the courtyard had been, of statues. The one nearest the door was a little fawn with a very sad expression on its face, and Edmund couldn't help wondering if this might be Lucy's friend. The only light came from a single lamp, and close beside this sat the White Witch. "I've come, your Majesty," said Edmund, rushing eagerly forward. "How dare you come alone?" said the witch in a terrible voice. "Did I not tell you to bring the others with you?" "Please, your Majesty," said Edmund, "I've done the best I can. I've brought them quite close. They're in the little house on top of the dam just up the river, with Mr. and Mrs. Beaver." A slow, cruel smile came over the witch's face. "Is this all your news?" she asked. "No, your majesty," said Edmund, and proceeded to tell them all that he had heard before leaving the beaver's house. "What? Aslan?" cried the queen. "Aslan, is this true? If I find you've lied to me—" "Please, I'm only repeating what they said," stammered Edmund. But the queen, who was no longer attending to him, clapped her hands. Instantly the same dwarf whom Edmund had seen with her before appeared. "Make ready our sledge," ordered the witch, "and use the harness without bells." A sledge is a sleigh. I think I've said that before. And there was another word that I came across, and I cannot remember what it was, but you might not have known what it was. I may have to go back to it. "Make ready our sledge," ordered the witch, "and use the harness without bells." That is the end of chapter 9. What do you think is going to happen next? We'll do chapter 10 next time. I enjoyed our time together, and I need to let's see, or give you the answer to the sixth president of the United States was John Quincy Adams. His term was from 1825 to 1829, and that name sounds familiar because our second president was John Adams, and this is John Quincy Adams. See if you can do some research and find out if and how they were related. And Colorado was our state this time, and the capital of Colorado is Denver. All right, keep studying and memorizing those facts, and keep working on your multiplication facts, division facts, addition facts, subtraction facts, all the facts that you can think of for math. And I'll see you next time. Bye.